Let's go.
Welcome back to the Superman podcast. Joined by my co-host Lionel. Welcome, Lionel.
Hey, Matty, we're in the flesh today, mate. If you're watching this today, you're seeing us, both Matt and I, we actually caught up today to talk about business and a number of other things. And a lot of the things that we talk about is the scenarios and the clients that we talk about with our clients and what we're doing in our businesses. And that's how we've come about to talk about the Superman podcast. So in this session, you'll hear from us live from
Trinity 8 in
Trinity
Morisset.
8 Morisset. So we've been here doing a bit of a business strategy session. So, but at the same time, Manny, we wanted to obviously give our listeners a bit more information and a few stories that we've had with clients recently. So, but firstly, we want to do a bit of a round of the grounds. And mate, how is Newcastle Advisors going at the moment? What have you guys been doing? What have you been seeing? What's in the works at the moment?
We're going pretty well at the moment. Lots of new clients coming through. A couple of disability cases, Lionel. A couple of police officers that have been medically discharged, which is horrible to see, especially when they're in their 40s. And then also we're still working on Newcastle Advisors headquarters, which we're in the process of purchasing. So watch this space, mate. What about yourself? Purpose planning.
Yeah, purpose planning. We've just been in the trenches. Actually, been in the trenches, but we've been down and out lately. We had a little bit of sickness recently with our family, just cold and flu stuff that really puts you out of the game. And then yeah, really on the business side of things, just yeah, growing with new clients and catching up with new people all the time. So but at the
Out
same
in
time,
Bathurst yesterday.
yeah, we're out in Bathurst this week and on the Central Coast today. So we're getting around, we're seeing our people, our clients in person, which is what I promote a lot about with what I do, is go out and see our clients in person, shake their hands and get to know them obviously on the financial level and solving all their issues.
I think dealing with people's life savings and their money, it's hard to build trust over a computer. Like lots of super funds and banks are trying to do that, Lionel, but it's just so difficult when we're trying to build trust and there's complex strategies that you're trying to articulate. And it's difficult to do over a computer screen.
Yeah, it's super hard. Like, I don't know how people sit behind the computer all the time, day in, day out, go from one Zoom meeting to the next Zoom meeting and trying to sort of connect with people on a deeper level, because the financial planning piece, it's all about connecting on a deeper level. The better you can have a better connection and a relationship, the better that we get to understand what you really want, what's really important to you. And then we can give you some great advice, timely advice, and sort of touch on those sort of like emotional strings as well to work out what's really important. But yeah, Matty, what are we gonna jump in today? Did you want to give us a disclaimer? I'll hit us with a disclaimer.
All information is general of nature.
Yeah.
We haven't taken your personal circumstances into account. Both Lionel and I are licensed through Axes. And did I miss anything, Lionel?
No, you can find most of the information that we have on us on our website. So my website is www.purposeplanning.com.au.
And I'm newcastleadvisors.com.au.
So yeah, you can find our privacy information there in our financial services guide, which is pretty much our compliance document, which tells you who we are, what we do, what
Qualifications.
what advice areas we have, and the advice fees, like minimums that we can charge clients as well.
Yep. Perfect.
So
I think today, Lionel, we're going to discuss, both you and I have had this conversation with different clients over the last probably 3 or 4 weeks. Grandparents looking to support their grandchildren, whether it's right to make a contribution to super where they can't access it until they're actually 60 years old,
yeah.
or is there alternative ways where we can manage it like in a trust or something that's locked up until they're 20, 21, then can help them out with maybe university fees or, get them better education opportunities and employment opportunities to really give them a kickstart in life.
So yeah, maybe lay the letter of the law, the foundation of what's the client's that are coming to you asking you about this, and what are their scenarios, and what were their first suggestions on what they think they can do?
So lots of clients come in, and what we say is a bit like when you jump on an aeroplane, Lionel. It's you put your own oxygen mask on first, make sure you're okay with your retirement, you've got enough cash flow, enough capital, and then you look after the people around you, being your children and your grandchildren. So that's the stage we got out with a few of our clients. We got to the stage where they were comfortable, they had more than enough, and it was more or less saying, well, the next generation, what does our legacy look like?
Exactly right. And yeah, that's the thing these days. People want to give away as much as they would like to give away, but at the same time, they need to look after themselves first.
Yeah.
Look after number one first. And then eventually, at some stage, the next generation's going to get it anyway.
Correct.
So I always think the people that give their money away, it's all well and good, but at the same time, it's not well and good when the next generation goes and pisses up the wall. They
So it's
make bad decisions
yeah.
around it. So you can really change the way that those decisions are made by actually putting in mechanisms and structures in place early on now that you can actually make sure that the money's not going to go and get pissed up the wall.
So putting in a set of rules, right, Lionel?
Yeah.
To say, I don't want the kids to get it before they're 18.
X amount of years,
They only can use it for this type of funding or money. And they only can pull out X amount of dollars each year or so forth.
Yeah.
Rather than giving a big lump sum, say, here's 200 grand, do your best.
Yeah. Because most people are like, oh, I want to give the grandkids something, give the grandkids something. I'm like, well, how much do you want to give them? At what point in time do you want to give them?
Yep.
And our thought process goes to, well, what is the best mechanical way to do that without having the big ATO tax man jump in and say, I'll have a share of that.
Yep. Putting the hand in your pocket to take what you've worked bloody hard for all your life. So yeah, a few different structures that we've come across, Lionel. I think the first one a lot of grandparents come to because they're using superannuation, Lionel. They're seeing it. They're seeing how it benefits them. We've had a few questions around, do we actually contribute for our grandchildren into super? What are your thoughts around that?
You sort of really got to look at the actual real concepts around superannuation and the real benefits behind it. All right. Now, you got to really ask the grandparents as well, if you're going to go and give this money away to them, when do you want them to receive it?
Or benefit.
And benefit from it and actually be able to go and use the money. Because superannuation, as we all know at the moment, the rules are that you can go and access it at the earliest at age 60. Now, who knows what the government's going to do in years to come? They may push it out to 65, 70 because everyone's
a politician changing the rules around super a lot.
They don't do that often, but only every couple of years. So that's one of the considerations that you're going to look at there. If you're actually going to go and put money in the super, then when's a kid actually going to go and be able to use it? 60 is the earliest. And if you've got a grandkid that is 5, that's like 55 years away. All well and good that you're thinking about their long-term future and actually when they get to retirement and the benefits of the impact of investing the funds, the compound interest effect and all that. But you've got to look at the first really foresight piece that, well, when do you actually really want to give the money to them? If it's you want to give it to them when they actually make good decisions for themselves and actually set their own families up, which where most people need lump sums of money.
And you can change their lives.
I know like myself now, if Michael was given $1 million, it'd be like, holy smokes, there goes half my mortgage. But at the same time, you want to be able to go and give that money when you can actually have a vital impact to someone's life.
Yeah, I think looking at superannuation, you can have a grandchild struggle their whole entire life, not own a house, be renting with their family, and then they get to 60 and they've got millions of dollars in super, which they can then access. So they've been struggling until 60. And that's if they make 60. They could pass away before 60, which could happen, and they never benefit from the grandparents' contribution.
Exactly right.
Which is the other thing for me that sits in this piece. And then there's potentially death benefit tax. The government putting his hand in your pocket to say, you've passed away before 60, your kids are over 18. We're going to take 17% of that. Thanks, Lionel.
Just an
Appreciate it.
additional tax that
Yep.
didn't really need to have it come around, but
Yeah.
they're just putting their hands out anyway. So,
So
Matt,
for me, I try and tread carefully around superannuation, especially for anyone under 18. It's not probably in my wheelhouse or structure to even consider that.
no,
I think there's so many other alternatives, which we'll go through, Lionel,
yeah.
that we get to before we reach superannuation.
Yeah, superannuation is designed for your retirement only. And when you're getting closer to the time when you can actually access the funds, then it's wise to start pushing more money for it, or pushing money to it early on when you can afford to do it yourself to reduce your own tax. But if you're giving money away that you want the grandkids to go and use in their early 20s or 30s to help support their family, to obviously help potentially getting to the housing market, which is going to be a massive issue for people in years to come, then maybe superannuation is not the spot for it.
And the other case, Lionel, is we haven't had the first generation of Australians to come through that's had superannuation their whole entire life, that's had compulsory super,
haven't.
especially at 11 or 12%.
Not through their whole career.
So those people that are coming through, they're in their 40s at the moment, early 40s, mid 40s, that have had superannuation, and they're going to have millions of dollars in superannuation, which is going to be more than enough for their retirement. So why would we be contributing to that end when a grandchild is going to have more than enough in superannuation at 60?
Yeah.
We need to worry about the front end and giving them a kickstart in life.
Exactly right. But that front end is important of when you actually go and give it to them as well.
Yeah.
And how you give them, there's a number of different ways to do it. So probably the simplest way is to save up all that money, put it under your pillow or under your bed, and hold cold hard cash and go and give it to them. But the same thing, if you go and leave it in cash, what happens to that is over time, inflation erodes the amount of purchasing power that money has.
Oh, there's a story that came out of America this week, Lionel, where a daughter, her mum was in her 70s and she had a bed for 15 odd years. The daughter thought she'd do the right thing, Lionel, and chuck out of bed and buy her a new big king size bed. So she bought this king size bed, put it in place. The mum got home, started crying and collapsed on the ground. She had $1 million stuffed in the mattress. She took out the sewing and stuffed it in the mattress, and it was gone in the tip, never to be seen again. So literally stuffing it in the mattress still comes with risk, Lionel.
A hell of a lot of risk if no one knows about it.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. So yeah,
what's the next option
cold
after
hard
stuff?
cash, you can have the money sitting in a bank account and have the money sitting in a bank account in your own name or your partner's in a joint name. And obviously that money sitting in there could be either sitting in cash if you don't know what to do with it, which most people these days have not a lot of forethought or not a lot of ideas on how to go and manage money or cash or lump sums of money. Or the secondary option there is investing in a term deposit. Now, if you stay with one bank, the bank will give you interest at whatever rate they're going to give you. There is banks out there that can give you multiple different rates of interest, but at the same time, that interest becomes taxable to your own individual taxable income. Let's just say, for example, you're still working and you want to give money to your grandkids and your income's 180 grand a year or 150 grand a year, then all the interest that you make for your grandkids is going to add to your taxable income for the year, and you're going to be paying either 39 cents of the dollar, or you're going to be paying 47 cents of the dollar for over $190,000. So that sort of wipes out that way.
So losing between a third and almost a half of what you generate.
Yeah, literally. But the grandchild's going to get the benefits of having that cash at one stage. What you want to really look at is the two components of actually having money and when you need to give it to them, but at the same time, making sure that money is working for them over the next 10, 15, 20, 25 years, because there's a lot of investment time frame that you've got on your hands to invest those funds. So you want to make sure it's invested in the right area. Now, if you've got a long investment time frame, you can actually afford to see the markets go up and down. And the big thing is, it's not trying to time the market on when to put it in at the bottom and then selling it out from the top, because you're going to see a lot of market volatility. I mean, you can't work out what the crystal ball is always going to say. So it's always just put the money in there, let it ride, Sally, let it ride, and then continually contributing to those funds gradually over time and letting the compound interest work over time, which they call it
Eighth wonder of the world,
eighth
Lionel.
wonder of the world. So, but if you do that, then you're going to end up with a fair fat chunk of money. All right. If you invest those funds through your own personal name and put it in your own personal name or in a joint name with you and your husband and wife, then every year that money's invested, there's going to be income generated from that investments, and you're going to be paying tax on the income every year. Now, when you sell the investment to go and transfer it and give it to your grandkids in, say, 10, 15, 20 years' time, the value is gone from here, but the value of the future portfolio is here. So there is a big difference between what you started with and where you've actually ended up with. So then that's what we're looking at then, is a massive, big, fat capital gains tax bill.
The government putting his hands in your pocket again.
And the capital gains tax bill is actually applicable to you, the individuals, at the individual rates, because you got it in joint names or in individual names. So there's a lot of tax considerations to think about there. Paying tax every year on the additional income that you're making. And when you want to actually go and give that money to your grandkids, capital gains tax bill on you that you're going to have to either pay out of the capital that you actually made for them, or actually cough up and pay the capital gains tax themselves. Now, that's why we as financial advisors, we're trying to think outside the box and look at different ways to go and do it. And Matty, he's come up with a...
What's the alternative option, Lionel?
Mate,
The alternative option is we can potentially look at an investment bond or an education bond. So it's internally taxed structure, like a trust, like a company. It's a different entity. It's not held in your own name. Those funds aren't contributed to your marginal tax rates, which you were just alluding to, Lionel. And it's internally taxed at a maximum of 30%. So no more.
Yeah, that's pretty good. So the benefits of doing that is that you're reducing the tax rate from your standard marginal tax rate outside of super compared to the tax rate inside the investment bond. Actually, sometimes the investment bonds have a lower tax rate if they have a lower turnover of stock.
And franking credits come into it. Like there's a whole plethora of things that come into reducing the actual tax rate. But the maximum, which we legally have to say, Lionel, is 30%.
So yeah, that's the benefit there of actually moving it into that structure. And the structure there is just moving it into another type of a structure. It's taking it out of your own personal name, putting it into another structure's name. And you still have the ability to choose the different types of investments through it as well. Now, the benefits of doing this is that after 10 years, especially on the investment bond side, let's just touch on that first.
Yep.
So the investment bond time side of it, you've really got a 10-year time frame that the tax is technically paid within 10 years. So from whenever you start it to the year 10, you've actually, if you're investing the funds, they're going to pay the tax inside the actual investment structure. After the 10-year period, everything becomes tax paid or technically tax free. So that means you can actually go and give those monies to whoever you want to give it to, grandchild or whatever it is, and transfer those funds to those grandchildren at that particular time, which will be tax free in their name. It's tax paid within the bond, and then it transfers to the grandchild, and then it's tax paid. So that's the rules there. So when you're setting it up, you've usually got an initial amount that you want to put into it. There is a rule around, there's like 125% rule, which means from year one that you set it up with to year two, in year two, when you want to go and add any money to it, you can't put any more than 125% of the previous year's contribution into it. And that rule applies every year until you get to year 10, technically. So that's one of the little rules around it to make sure that you're actually not breaking the 125% rule. But traditionally with a lot of grandparents is they want to give X amount of dollars to their grandkids, and then they're actually going to go and give them $300 to $500 to $600 for gifts for the year.
Yeah.
You know, like,
Birthdays, Christmas,
and that's what we say. Why don't, instead of wasting $600 to $700
stupid
or
toys that
$800 or
break,
$1,000 a year in toys and
clothes.
clothes and shit that they just don't
Yeah.
need, go and put the money away for them, because then eventually when they get to that period of time that you want to give it to them, it's going to be tax-free money and it's going to make a lot of money over that period of time. So it's a super effective way to give money away to your grandkids.
So we're waiting a 10-year period, Lionel, rather than potentially a 55-year period,
Exactly
is what
right.
you're telling me.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you've got a grandchild that's 5 and you want to go and put money into their super account, they're going to wait till they're 60, 55 years. But if we've got a grandchild that's 5 and you want to go and give money to them on their 15th birthday, you can chuck the money into an investment bond and transfer the bond's name to their individual
Yep.
name. Beneficiary or the grandchild, and they can go and have the money tax-free. Then it comes into the point in time, when is the right timing to give the money to the grandchild? Let's just say that over the course of the period that you wanted to give it to them when they're 18, and then the grandchild's like, he's doing up to no good and he's doing this and he's mixing with the wrong people, then it's pretty easy for you. You can actually go and change the future transfer event date and move it from either 18, 21, 25, or 30.
Yep.
I know that most people these days, when they hit their 30s or 30, that most people are pretty mature. And I've had clients recently where they've given their inheritance from their parents to the next generation. They've skipped the generation to the grandchild, because they know that when they come around to go and buying a house, they're not going to have cash available to be able to go and get into the market. So she's thought about this and said, oh, I want to give my grandchildren a house to go and
deposit at least.
Or in this case, fairly heavy deposit. To buy actual house. This one was like, she put 130 grand. And she's invested the funds. And I'll just cut the short story long story short, and she's 130 grand. Grandchild that was 0 in 30 years time would have estimated $2.1 million tax-free.
That's a little deposit, Lionel.
One lump sum contribution of 130 grand.
Crazy.
Child 2 was 1, and they're going to have 1.9 million. Child
so
3,
what impact is that going to have compared to them receiving $3 million at 60 or $4 million at 60?
It's going to be a massive impact, because they're going to have the ability to go and use those funds really early on to go and set themselves up in their family's life.
Well, they're not going to have a mortgage.
They're not going to have if they're buying books, they'll buy houses. No, they'll probably 4 or 5 houses by then. So, but at the same time, you're giving money away to people at the right time of life to have.
I think that's the key.
Impact.
That's the key. What
Bigger
benefit?
impact.
What legacy? What are you trying to achieve?
Yeah, and fair enough, people are trying to think about someone's retirement at 60 years down the track, but who knows what the world's going to look like in 60 years time.
Like we said, they could have passed.
Yeah.
The government could have changed the rules.
Yeah, literally.
So yeah, I think it's really key. And the other thing with some of these bonds is also it bypasses the will.
Exactly.
So it can't be contested, Lionel.
Yeah.
Like if you've got other people that are coming into a trunk contest, this part of your will carries on the legacy.
Yeah.
Let's say your granddaughter or grandson then meets a new boy or girl or whatever they're called these days.
It's it. Boy meets girl meets boy.
And so when relationships break down, generally there's a financial settlement, especially after 6 or 12 months living together. So that all gets protected in having this bond until they get to that stage, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's pretty special structure to be able to give the benefit, provide a legacy, give them a kickstart in life, but also protect the money down into a family line until they're 30 odd.
Yeah. It's
ready to make that decision.
Yeah. Now, the other ways to look at this is called a education bond. Now, Maddie loves education bonds. Maddie, why don't you enlighten us the difference between an investment bond and an education bond?
The real added benefit is with an education bond, we can pay for your grandchildren's education out of this bond. So let's say they've got high school, private school fees, university fees, accommodation costs, textbooks, or anything to do with education fits in this mold. When we pay education fees out of this gift that you've provided in this education bond, you get a 30% tax rebate.
That's pretty good.
So if we're taking $100 out, $30 is getting chipped back in to the bond, which is increasing the longevity of your capital in there and the legacy you're providing. So not only are you providing them with quality education, whether it's private school or university, which is then going to help in employment opportunities and generate larger incomes potentially, you're also getting tax benefits for doing so.
Yeah, that's massive. Yeah, and the difference is the key difference between an investment bond and an education bond is pretty simple. The investment bond, you shouldn't really touch the money for 10 years. If you take the money out within 10 years, you get taxed on it in your own marginal tax rate. Whereas on an education bond, they actually create two different types of buckets. There's a capital bucket, is a chunk that you put in and the money that you're putting in. And then when that money makes income for the year, it's called an earnings. They have an earnings bucket. And the earnings is setting in a separate bucket here. So throughout the course of the first 10 years, if you actually want to go and pull money out of the investment bond because you want to go and pay for education costs for the grandchildren, and you're actually pulling it out in the grandchild's name, you actually got this you got the tax-free threshold if the grandchild is over the age of 18 as well. So that's one consideration to look at. But if you don't have to worry about the earnings bucket, you can just go into the education bond and pull the capital out tax-free to go and use it.
So let's say you chip in 100 grand today, tomorrow you can pull out 100 grand.
Technically, yeah, 100 grand.
Yeah. So it's got that flexibility, unlike superannuation, where it's locked up for that 55 years we discussed.
The money still is going to be invested in some type of investment option, which is going to be market linked.
Yep.
So there is a factor that you got to consider in that. So the market's going to go up when the market's going up, and it's going to go down when the market goes down. So you got to be factored under that. One way I've been looking at using this at the moment is a lot of people coming to us and saying, mate, I don't know if I can work till I'm 60. Like I want to pull up stumps at 55 and just travel for a few years before 60. And I'm like, well, how are you going to go and do that? Like,
on that 5 years before you get access to your super.
That's why you got to look at now is working out, well, what's it going to cost you to retire at 55? And how much money you're going to need between 55 and 60. And that's sort of like your gap analysis to help you work out, well, how much money do we need to set aside?
And what do we do, Lionel? What's our favorite word?
We're going to reverse engineer it.
Reverse engineer it, baby.
Reverse engineer it because we're going to work out how much money we need from 55 to 65 and work out what the lump sum is going to be that we need to live off in there. And then at the same time, we're going to push most of our other funds into superannuation because it's going to be sitting in a most tax effective environment. So I had the other guy, a guy that was 48, and he's like, mate, I've been working in the mines for all this time. I'm sick of working. I just want to retire as soon as I can. He goes, when can you make me retire? I said, you tell me how much money you want to live off in retirement first, and then we'll reverse engineer the situation and work backwards from that. He goes, oh, I had 150 grand in cash at the point in time. And he goes, mate, I just want to be able to make that work for me. You go and make it work for me, and then I'll do whatever you need us to do. So then I've gone off and worked out, well, he only needs, he was living off 40 grand a year tax free, which is pretty good. He's out from way out west in the red country.
Yep. God's country
out west. And he just needed 40 grand a year. So that was 200 grand just cash. All right. And if we're going to invest the funds for that next 5 years,
need less, right?
You need a lot less.
Yeah.
So we've set up this investment bond. Now we've set it up. We don't really need to even touch it because it's going to make itself money over time for the next 7 years between 48 and 55. And now we've got this education bond. Now the education bond technically is not going to be, it's going to potentially be used for education bond purposes at 55, because we don't know at 55 whether he's going to go back and study at TAFE or go back to
Retrain.
uni. But at the
Retrain
same time, if if the intention of that money
changes.
changes, then that's not a bad thing, because that can always happen in life. The intention at the start was to set up for education purposes, but his intention later in life at 55 said, stuff this, or no more education anymore.
I've got enough money.
I just want to live off
Yep.
40 grand per year. Now he can go to his education bond and pull out 40 grand a year tax-free, because the capital he's put in there.
Out of the capital bucket.
Then at the same time, because at 55, he's not earning any more income. So he's got the $20,000 tax-free threshold that he can pull 20 grand out of the earnings component for the year. So then that's going to give him enough money between 55 and 65 to retire off
Tax-free.
Tax-free.
Yep.
And then when he gets to 60, he can have access to his superannuation funds. So then that opens up another world
Avenue.
of
Yep.
money and funds to be able to go and fund their retirement. And then if there's any more money left in the investment bond, we can invest that and chuck it all into super if we've got enough contribution capital to do so. But at the same time, we can pull it out tax-free anyway. So there's ways around allowing people to go and have this ideal of retiring early and retiring before 60. And you don't have to go and put yourself through so much debt and buy property and have interest and have negative gearing,
You can keep it simple.
capital gains tax and all that sort of stuff. You can just keep it simple, put money into an education bond or an investment bond, and then start chipping away at it, putting money in it over time and letting it grow.
I think really our role, Lionel, is to reverse engineer it like you're talking about and de-risk everything. Take as much risk off the table as possibly we can to get them to the end result.
Exactly right.
Without gearing themselves up to the eyeballs. We can get them to the end result without having to gear property, risks about tenants, vacancies, interest rates.
Yeah, there's a lot
All
of
that stuff. If we can simplify it.
fucking stamp duty.
Stamp duty.
Stamp duty.
And then on the other end, agent commission. Agent commission on the other end.
Losing 6% of your money when you go into an investment property.
Yeah. So
Now, I'm not saying it's not a bad idea to go into investment properties, and they do make money over time, but there is a lot of costs
it
involved.
depends on time frames as well.
Yeah.
Uh,
So for this guy, he didn't want to have the complexity of buying investment properties and stuff like that. So
and he can't eat a brick either. At 55,
yeah, you
he
can't
can't put a brick on the table.
you can't sell off the back door to go and fund your retirement or fund your pre-retirement.
So yeah, horses for courses works for different people, right? I think to summarize today, Lionel, I think looking at grandparents trying to create a legacy for their grandchildren, it's really looking at the purpose, what type of legacy you're trying to create, and what's the highest and best use of the capital, how it can be structured. And then also there's an alternative measure for those looking to finish up work before the age of 60. How are you going to fund your lifestyle? Is it coming from investment properties and the rent? Or do you want to do it simpler and easier through something like an education bond or an investment bond?
Yeah.
So I think there's great uses for it out there. It's just looking for your particular scenario and what works best for you.
Yeah, the education bonds and investment bonds have been revamped lately, and you're able to choose a different type of investments through them as well. But you can't take away the concepts and the flexibilities that they give you. So that's the really important key there, is to make sure that you're understanding what's out there. And hopefully this podcast has given you a fair few different tips and insights on how to think about giving some money away.
Or even to do some more research and speak to a professional financial planner.
Yeah. And
like Lionel from Purpose Planning or Matt from Newcastle Advisors.
yeah, exactly right. And if you're thinking about retiring early and you thought you had to do it through property, well, then there's another solution here that you can actually do it through an investment bond or an education bond. And if you need the information on how to do it, reach out to us. We'd be more than happy to help. We help a number of people all over Australia at the moment. So reach out to us. My email is lionel@purposeplanning.com.au.
Mine's mmccabe@newcastleadvisor.com.
So that's it, guys. Thanks for listening to another podcast of the Superman podcast.
See you next week.
If you have liked the podcast and you're interested and you're keen to hear more topics about it, we'd love to hear what you want to talk about and all the different topics. We love talking about finance and scenarios. Or if you're one person that thinks, hey, I'd be a good guest to come onto the podcast, hey, reach out to us. We'd love to have you on and wanted to hear your story about either finance, money, or just a unique story in future, because we're going to have people on in the future that we're going to be talking
Yep.
about their different stories and situations and how we can give them some good advice. Bye for now.